One after another. A husband dead of natural causes.
There was no autopsy, no testing. He was cremated. His ashes were scattered at a lake. That was it.
A son dead from seizures.
And I'm like, oh my God, this mother must be devastated. She lost her husband, now she loses her son.
A daughter hanging on to life in the ER with flu-like symptoms.
It's bad.
Okay.
She was as close to death as you could get.
And a mother and wife, a devout church organist, left to shoulder the burden.
Either this is a terribly unlucky family or something fishy happened here.
But just how fishy? That's what police want to find out in a stunning interrogation.
Dear God.
Tonight, piecing together the secrets in a highly unusual family, the tell-all diary. Their bedside reading,
We had a book on poisonous plants.
their garage, always prepared for an emergency,
Who has antifreeze in the summertime?
and a very strange way of expressing sympathy.
I didn't want another one to die in the house.
And why is that?
Because houses are nasty after somebody's died in it.
So who's left in the family, if they can survive long enough?
Did you think somebody else was going to be next?
Talking on camera for the first time only to 2020, the daughter who did live to tell.
I consider them as killers who hate me.
What's wrong with these people?
What were you thinking at that point?
Oh God, another one.
A family plot.
Good evening. Thanks so much for joining us this Saturday night. I'm Elizabeth Vargas. David is away. Get ready for something you rarely see outside a courtroom. All the detective work and the interviewing of suspects that goes into catching a killer. It is an investigation that 2020 worked on for 2 years. A bizarre family plot that culminates in the discovery of a secret diary. And this ominous line from it that says so much. Only the quiet ones will be left. Here's Deborah Roberts.
At the foothills of the Ozarks sits Branson, Missouri, the Las Vegas of the Midwest. Drive 45 miles north on Old Route 66 and you're in Springfield, a tranquil college town where the buckle of the Bible Belt meets beer joints. Here on Page Street, in a modest 900-square-foot home, Diane Stouty and husband Mark embody that unlikely mix of holy water and firewater. She's the church organist down at Redeemer Lutheran. He's the lead singer and guitarist of a local blues band, Messing with Destiny. You'll get the irony a little later. Together, the couple, former college sweethearts, are raising 4 kids in that small house. 6 people, 3 small bedrooms, 1 bath. Tight quarters for what looks like a tight family. Did you get any sense of what their relationship was like?
As far as I knew, Mark's wife was great.
Charles Alexander is Mark's close buddy and the drummer in the band.
He was always happy with the kids. He was always happy with his wife. He loved them. He loved his family. And it was just a great family.
Well, things aren't great for everyone. See, Diane isn't just praying in church, she's paying the bills at home. Okay, Mark picks up an occasional shift bartending, but Diane, a nurse, is the breadwinner.
She seemed to be stable, ended up supporting him. He was the house husband, staying at home with the children.
And if Mark was a laid-back Mr. Mom, the actual mom of the house was civil, if a bit standoffish.
Was Diane friendly, warm?
You know, she was friendly to the point that I can tolerate you being in my driveway.
As the years wear on, life just keeps heaping more weight on Diane's slight shoulders, supporting her family in that cramped house and coping with some heavy challenges. 4th grader Brianna has a learning disability. Sean has autism. And oldest daughter Sarah, a college grad, is still at home with no job and a mountain of student debt. But inside that Page Street pressure cooker, Diane's beloved child is blossoming. 22-year-old Rachel, a star student. This is the relationship that would forge the whole family's fate.
She congratulated her every time Rachel had an accomplishment. When you look at it from the outside in, you think, that's a really close mother-daughter relationship, and isn't that great?
Ron Davis with ABC affiliate KSPR TV took us to the Stouty home.
And what was it about Rachel that drew her mom to her so intensely, do you think?
By all indications, Rachel is an exceptional human being. Very smart, very talented, artistic.
On Facebook, Diane raves about her beloved Rachel, her art, her academics. But nary a mention for her husband, Mark, who in April of 2012 is finally having his moment in the spotlight.
We had a good band. We were literally taking off.
He's flying high. Messing with Destiny is booking semi-regular gigs in Branson, joining the Aretha Franklin impersonators who get marquee billing. It's also Mark's birthday weekend. These are pictures from rehearsal that night, where Charles notices that Mark isn't quite himself.
What did you think was going on with him?
He was just so out of whack. And it wasn't like he was drunk or anything. He was just out of whack. He wasn't with us.
Then the next day, more odd behavior.
He just showed up at my door one day, Saturday. And I said, Mark. And he goes, oh, I'm here to celebrate my birthday, Charles. Only one thing struck me so out of place. His skin color.
What did it look like?
Yellow. His skin was actually a yellowish color.
So something was wrong with him.
Something was wrong with him.
He's right. On Easter Sunday, Diane comes back from church and finds her husband dead in bed.
I was devastated.
Did you have any inkling that anything was wrong? Did you get any clue that Mark's health might have been bad? I mean...
No.
Yet Diane tells authorities her husband's been sick and refused to see a doctor. There's a curious ring of blood around Mark's mouth, but it's not enough to alarm the medical examiner, who rules the death due to natural causes.
It was a bit of a shock, but I thought, well, you know, he doesn't really exercise, doesn't really cook, so probably not real healthy eating habits.
There was no autopsy, there was no testing. He was cremated. His ashes were scattered at a lake. That was it.
Diane organizes a memorial service at Redeemer Lutheran Church.
What was that like?
Well, it was sad. It was a sad event. The wife wanted us to do a song in his honor. So we played the song.
Mark's favorite song, Darkest Hour. This is their audio recording from that day. As the family copes with Mark's sudden death, there's a small consolation, a $20,000 life insurance payout, enough for Diane to move the family to a new neighborhood and a larger home.
They moved into this house right here.
Oh, big difference.
It definitely is. It's a step up from where they were.
When we come back, the Stouties may have moved on up, but their bad fortunes are just beginning.
The coroner's van was in their driveway.
Because whatever afflicted Mark seems to run in the family.
I said it was impossible. I was floored.
And eventually, police will suggest a different diagnosis.
My husband died last year of a heart attack.
Did he?
Stay with us.
"2020 Saturday" continues with more of A Family Plot.
At Redeemer Lutheran Church, Pastor Jeff Sippy tends his flock with fervor and passion.
We're jumping for Jesus.
And in the summer of 2012, devout organist Diane Stouty has good reason to lean on the pastor's sermons for strength.
Then Mary arose and went with haste in the hill country. And so you can see a woman with a mission.
Her husband Mark has recently died, and she's just moved with her 4 kids to this friendly street, hoping to put that sadness behind them. Rhonda Anderson, a church secretary, lives across the street.
Did you see them going and coming?
One day the garage door was open and I thought, I'm going to go over there and say hi. And just as I got over there, it was really like they looked at me and closed the garage door, really, because I could still see them standing there. So I don't think they wanted to talk to anybody.
Rhonda doesn't take it personally, leaving her private neighbors to themselves. Until weeks later, one Sunday in September, she looks out the window and is shocked by what she sees.
The coroner's van was in their driveway. A policeman said there was a death in the home. I was blown away.
Once again, death has knocked on the Stouty's door. The firstborn child, Sean, gone at 26. Diane tells police he had flu-like symptoms for 3 weeks.
Well, she reported she checked on him at about 6:30 in the morning, went to church, and then when she came back from church, found him not in bed anymore, but on the floor without a pulse.
She explains that her son had a history of seizures, and though like his dad, Sean has an odd ring of blood around his mouth, it doesn't look suspicious. So the medical examiner, after an autopsy, decides that the second Stouty family death in 6 months is due to prior medical issues.
They're thinking, wow, poor family. What bad luck. No one was asking questions.
And nobody questioned that story,
No.
even though her husband had died just months before.
Yes.
After police leave the scene, Rhonda walks over to check on her standoffish neighbor. Surprisingly, Diane answers the door.
I said, we just saw the coroner's van was here. Are you okay? Is everything all right? And she said, oh yeah, my son died.
Was she distraught?
No, she said it to me just like that. She said, my son died. Very matter-of-factly. I just was shocked.
Rhonda may be one of the few people Diane talks to about Sean's death, because for him, there is no funeral, no memorial, not even an obituary. Like his father, Sean is quickly cremated.
I'm like, oh my God, this mother must be devastated. She lost her husband, now she loses her son.
Now only the Stouty women are left. Diane, her darling Rachel, 12-year-old Brianna, and Sarah living their secluded lives.
I think they closed the doors even tighter because you didn't see them outside. I don't know how they even got their mail because we didn't see them at the mailbox.
Then, the following June, could it be true the Stouty plague strikes again? This time it's Sarah. Diane has seen this end badly before, so she takes her 24-year-old daughter to the emergency room.
Sarah is sick, goes to the hospital, gravely ill.
Sarah's in very grave condition. It does not appear that she is going to survive.
Sarah's kidneys shut down, pancreas and other organs failing. Worst of all, her brain is hemorrhaging blood. Diane turns to Facebook, maybe hoping for divine intervention. Asking for prayers as my daughter Sarah is in critical condition. Diane's brother-in-law, Michael Stouty, is floored by the post.
Wow, it's like a lot of bad luck here in this family. What's going on?
A good question. What is going on?
911, where is your emergency?
Finally, someone in Springfield, someone claiming to be close to the family, calls in a tip to police, hinting that the pious church organist may harbor an unholy family secret.
What did the caller say exactly?
That Diane Stouty might be responsible for 2 or 3 homicides. Again, brought up Mark's death, Sean's death being very close proximity to each other. Also spoke about the potential that Sarah was going to die as well.
So the caller was essentially blowing the whistle on Diane Stouty.
Correct, yes.
Armed with that anonymous tip, Springfield Police Detective Neil McCamus begins investigating. He starts by pulling the reports on Mark and Sean's deaths. The uncanny similarities are stunning.
Mark was experiencing flu-like symptoms for several days prior to his death. Same type of description with Sean. Now we have Sarah that's also in the hospital with flu-like symptoms.
Police are now connecting the dots. Then Detective McCamus visits the hospital, where he gets more troubling news from Sarah's doctor.
He had told me that they had performed several tests. They couldn't figure out what was going on, and he said that he was suspicious that it was a possible poisoning case.
So your radar goes up?
Definitely.
Police figure it's about time Diane Stouty answers some questions. She voluntarily comes to the station, and in interview room number 3...
Is it Stout?
Stouty.
One of the strangest police interviews we've ever broadcast begins. Diane discusses Sarah's critical condition.
I'm looking at the lab reports and it's like, you can't be living. Her kidneys were shot. She had a brain bleed. Her pancreas was acting up.
Well,
it's bad.
Okay.
I mean, she was as close to death as you could get.
Her affect may seem strange, but remember, this is a woman dealing with great stress, emotionally and financially, and her family's crumbling one by one.
My husband died last year of a heart attack. He had a lot of medical issues.
Did he?
So, yeah.
What kind of stuff did he have?
Oh, he had liver problems. He was diabetic. He wouldn't quit smoking.
Do you have a son as well?
No, not anymore.
Not
He
anymore.
died. He stopped breathing during one of his seizures.
I've just never heard of anybody dying from a seizure before. Is that pretty
can
common?
Happen. It can happen.
And I'll be back here.
The detective steps away, but when we come back, he does too, to turn up the heat on the Merry Widow.
There's been some things that have come up during the investigation.
It's time to learn what's really going on behind closed doors at the Stouty home.
I'm horrible. I'm a horrible mother.
Stay with us.
"2020 Saturday" continues with more of A Family Plot.
Over the course of 14 months, the quiet, God-fearing Stouty family seems as cursed as an Old Testament transgressor. Member after member inexplicably struck down. Mark Stouty, who fronted a blues band, and 26-year-old son Sean, both suddenly dead. 24-year-old Sarah lying in the ICU, her kidneys and brain failing. Now police want to know, is this a matter of bad luck or bad intentions? Which is why Diane Stouty, wife, mom, and church organist, is sitting in the interrogation hot seat.
Don't know what I can tell you.
With cameras rolling, Detective McAmis asks about her marriage, and for the first time glimpses a reservoir of resentment.
We were still married, but it was not what you call a good marriage.
Have there been any infidelities on either side?
He had. He was running around and he would drink and smoke pot and...
So he wasn't a very good guy is what you're saying?
Yeah. Even with all his faults, I still loved him.
In this police interrogation video, Diane reveals cracks in the foundation of the Stouty home.
Was there ever any physical abuse towards you?
No.
Nothing like that?
I mean, I didn't think it was that bad. But my kids would probably say otherwise. I wasn't happy.
Okay.
Now watch as he deploys a classic interrogation technique, shifting from inquisitor to sympathizer.
I'm a believer myself, so I understand where you're coming from on that.
He tells Diane sometimes even the righteous reach a breaking point. So what happened with Sarah?
As far as did I do something to her, I didn't do anything to her. I mean, I guess I could have taken her to the ER sooner, but I didn't know.
A major reveal. Diane may have delayed taking her daughter to the hospital.
And that was just kind of where her story started to crumble.
But I'm horrible. I'm a horrible mother.
Then a suggestion that Sean may have been suicidal. But again, she admits she did nothing to help.
He'd been threatening to kill himself, and I didn't want to bother because I was tired of it. I'm such a crummy person.
Now's your chance to tell us why and to show some remorse and ask for forgiveness.
Then she drops a bomb.
Put it really short and sweet. I knew they were drinking antifreeze.
Drinking antifreeze?
And I was so mad at them, I didn't want to take them in.
You knew, Diane, that they were drinking antifreeze because you were giving it to them.
And I didn't know what else to do. I really didn't.
And there it is. After 2 hours in the box, Diane Stouty quietly confessing to poisoning her own children with antifreeze.
This is a woman who's admitting that she killed her son and tried to kill her own daughter. What are you making of this?
I was just totally astonished, to be honest. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. There were times I didn't know what to say or how to react.
How long had you been giving them the antifreeze?
Maybe a couple of days.
And what were you putting it in?
Coca-Cola.
How much would you put in?
A couple of teaspoons, maybe.
But why antifreeze? She explains that it's easy to get and easy to disguise. The main ingredient, ethylene glycol, a colorless, odorless, sweet-tasting, and deadly chemical.
Killing someone with antifreeze is a classic way to try to mask what you're doing. It takes time, it's relatively flavorless, and there are no immediate signs after death unless you're looking for it.
Now it's all pouring out, a full-blown confession. Diane admitting she poisoned her husband Mark the exact same way, spiking his Gatorade with antifreeze. Apparently, she'd had it with a husband she considered an abusive deadbeat.
By then, I hated his guts. He would throw things at me. He would throw things at the kids. And I guess I just had enough.
Killing her husband's awful enough, but a mother poisoning her own children? This mom's motive is downright chilling.
Both Sean and Sarah would just basically, I don't know, trash the house and never helped support or even contribute. Sean would be interfering with whatever I would do.
So if he was just a constant bother, wouldn't leave you alone.
Oh, he was more than a bother.
With a pest, would that be a good word for it?
No, it was more than that.
My husband got on my nerves. I couldn't stand him. And my son, was a pest. I mean, did she seem like at her wit's end?
No, she, again, throughout, she stayed flat. Even when she's telling me that information, she seemed unfazed.
Yep, unfazed even by the ultimate kicker, why she poisoned her daughter.
And then with Sarah, you talked about, she wasn't getting a job, and then she had these student loans, and you were going to end up having to pay for them.
That's pretty much.
And you just had it with her as well.
I'm not a perpetual killer. I'm just stupid. I regret doing it. I really do. I've screwed up everybody. I've screwed up my whole family.
But it's too late. Here come the steel bracelets.
Right now, you're going to be under arrest.
Case closed? Not by a long shot. See, police are about to search the Stouty home and will find a purple diary with some very purple prose.
This was a key piece of evidence.
It will prove that Diane had a partner and eyes on another target in these horror movie homicides. Next.
2020 Saturday continues.
As the freight trains roll through Springfield, Missouri, the wheels of justice are turning slowly too. Police are interviewing 22-year-old Rachel Stouty, a star student, gifted musician and artist, her mom's pride and joy.
Mom was there every step of the way, really encouraging and cheerleading Rachel to be great.
But now her dearest mommy, Diane Stouty, is behind bars after confessing to the poisoning deaths of her husband and son and the attempted murder of Rachel's older sister.
Hey, Rachel.
Hi.
Can I get you to switch with me?
Okay.
Police just hit Rachel with the news.
Confusion, shock. I mean, that's... Nobody expects to have somebody that they know do that.
In this interrogation tape obtained by 2020, Detective McAmus lays it all out. Demure Diane has delicately engineered a ruthless culling of her own herd. Only the pious and the productive will make the cut.
Did you think somebody else was going to be next?
Darrow can be poisoned just for sitting around on YouTube. I don't do anything around the house. Brianna sure as heck doesn't do anything around the house.
Rachel fesses up that her mom had some unusual reading material.
We had a book on poisonous plants. I mean, she would talk about cyanide.
Then a critical moment across town. Crime scene investigators are busy combing through the Stouty home. These pictures show a house in disarray.
This was the home, the second residence.
Detective McAmus gave us a tour inside with permission from the new homeowner.
This was Sarah's room. There was couches, there were papers, just kind of things strewn about. She kind of had an office space set up. You could see there were some computers.
Laptops, flash drives, sculptures scattered about. And in the garage, pay dirt.
This is where our crime scene detectives located antifreeze on the workbench.
And right next to the antifreeze, the other compound in Diane's cruel chemistry, an otherwise unassuming six-pack of Coke.
Coke was described as what was given to both Sean and Sarah in terms of poisoning them.
The concoction right there.
Yes,
The
correct.
Coke and the
That is it.
antifreeze.
In the bedroom, a curious detective makes that dynamite discovery. This is Rachel's purple diary, haphazardly thrown on a shelf. Its contents a trove of sinister secrets.
It appeared to be a journal entry written by Rachel, knowing that Mark and Sean were getting ready to be killed.
So at first you're thinking this is a mother, an evil mother, who's tried to wipe out her family. And now you discover her daughter might be involved, helping her?
Yes.
That journal entry dated June 13th, 2011, nearly a year before Mark died. It reads,
"It's sad when I realize how my father will pass on in the next 2 months. Sean, my brother, will move on shortly after. It will be tough getting used to the changes, but everything will work out."
That's pretty chilling.
Very.
She's writing in a journal about killing her father and her brother.
It was extremely alarming.
I'm gonna have you wait here for just a second.
Back at the station, Detective McAmis leaves the room and gets briefed on that explosive diary. He returns in a different mood.
Rachel, do you recognize this?
Yeah, I remember this.
This is Missouri, and now it's time to show me.
You wrote this then, is what you're telling me? Okay.
I'd had a lot of really bad dreams about them dying. I talked to Mom about it, and she mentioned she was thinking of hurting them.
Rachel's bad dream just beginning. McAmis isn't buying her story or her tears.
What did you tell your mother?
That it would be quick. That it'd be easy.
Rachel reveals the awful truth. Mother's favorite was also Mother's little helper.
When did you guys come up with this plan?
I mean, we talked about it, like Christmas.
She's sitting right here. She's starting to tell you the whole thing, and she basically owns up to it.
To hear the daughter and the admissions that she's making and that this was a plan, and I was totally shocked, totally stunned by everything that had taken place. It was just a completely surreal feeling.
The mother-daughter duo carefully plan and research all options. Suffocation, pills, Googling how to kill your husband. The devout Christians even explored witchcraft.
Like on my computer specifically, there's a lot of Wicca sites.
Before settling on antifreeze.
Because in general, you could put it in something and you couldn't taste it.
What else did she tell you?
She wanted a specific tasteless one.
Rachel, whose idea was this?
Mom brought it up, and we discussed.
Mom recruiting daughter to help her systematically kill her husband, her son, and then poison her daughter? It's almost unheard.
It was supposed to be just Dad, but pretty soon Diane turned her attention to Sean, the son she thought was irritating. Listen to how little it took to end up on her hit list.
Sean, we argued on a lot, because I still think we could have put him in like a assisted living, but she wanted him out.
What did you say when she talked about killing Sarah?
Sarah was equally unneeded. We could have found someplace else for her. She was very adamant on that Sarah was just a burden, that Sarah needed to be taken care of.
Rachel, too, now under arrest, charged with murdering her father and brother. Her sister Sarah still fighting for her life.
When Rachel was arrested, there was a big clue found in her purse.
That's right. Her purse was searched, incident to arrest, and there was a note.
With her sister Sarah hospitalized, the star student Rachel had authored a poem worthy of Edgar Allan Poe.
Once upon a time, there were 6. Now, there are 3. Only the quiet ones will be left. My mom, my little sister, and me.
Wow. That's pretty cold stuff.
This is a very cold and depraved murder.
The Springfield poisoning case. 2 people dead, 2 in jail, 1 in the hospital.
The family was poisoned with antifreeze.
The next day, the tale hits the news like a twister. While down at the county courthouse, a rare sight. A mother and daughter, both arraigned for murder.
No way, this cannot be true. Not right here in our little neighborhood.
But no one is more surprised than Mark's old bandmate, Charles Alexander.
I was floored. And when I heard that he was poisoned, then I just cried. I collapsed. I said, I can't believe this woman did this.
Looking back, he begins recalling little quirks about his friend's wife.
I was never really allowed in the house for some strange reason. It was always at the garage. And it was so strange. I seen the antifreeze bottles sitting in the garage, and I'm thinking, who has antifreeze in the summertime?
Strangest of all, Diane's blasé manner after Mark died.
I went to her house and asked her what happened. And she proceeded to tell me like she was giving me a recipe to a cake. No emotions, no nothing.
Just matter of fact.
It was just like, oh, he died and you had 2 eggs.
Also shocked, Diane's fellow church members at Redeemer Lutheran. Well, maybe except for one. Remember that anonymous 911 caller who first tipped off police?
Do you ever find out who blew the whistle on her?
We were able to determine that the anonymous caller was actually the pastor at Diane's church.
The pastor turned her in?
Yes.
Pastor Jeff Sippy.
If you are not praying for your children, if you are not deeply invested in them, I'm going to tell you this, no one else is either.
The leader of the flock compelled by his own conscience to root out the wolf among them. He declined our requests for an interview.
So he knew that something was evil here.
I think he definitely had his suspicions. Diane's demeanor after the deaths, he told me he couldn't take those feelings, that he had to call it in.
When we come back, 2 Stouties in jail awaiting trial, 2 Stouties dead, and a 3rd in ICU. But this one regains consciousness and lives to tell. Did she suspect that her soda was spiked?
So you read in her journal she was trying to kill you?
She tells her story only to 2020 next.
"2020 Saturday" continues with more of A Family Plot.
You're looking at a woman who defied all the odds and lived to tell, surviving a vicious poisoning.
Well, this is where I sleep.
24-year-old Sarah Stouty has had to relearn to walk and talk.
I'm right here.
Her speech still stunted from the irreversible brain damage she suffered. Tonight, for the first time, she's speaking out about the horror and betrayal. Sarah lost her father Mark suddenly in 2012, and her brother Sean just 5 months later.
You found him dead.
Yes.
That must have been horrifying.
Traumatizing.
And more traumatizing, learning that her mom Diane was not her protector, but a predator, poisoning them all with antifreeze. And the icing on the cake, her younger sister Rachel was part of the plot.
But I was asking, why? Why did my mom and sister kill my dad and brother and harmed me?
Did you believe it, or did you sort of assume this can't be true?
I assumed that it wasn't true. They were innocent people being blamed.
But any trace of sympathy evaporates after Sarah reads in the newspaper why her mother poisoned 3 family members. She simply despised them.
They really planned this heinous crime. I was shocked. I just felt like I wanted to strangle my mom because of what she did.
The big question, why did Diane bother to rush Sarah to the hospital after leaving her son and husband to die at home? In a follow-up interview with a clearly rattled Rachel at the Greene County Jail, Detective McAmis wants to know.
When Sarah got so bad, why did you take her to the hospital?
Was it some last-minute tug of Christian conscience? Apparently, no.
I didn't want another one to die in the house.
And why is that?
Because houses are nasty after somebody's died in it. I get a lot of nightmares.
But what Rachel tells police next may be the most heinous of all. She and Mom Diane weren't exactly finished.
Brianna, who's she next? When were you guys gonna kill Brianna?
Sometime after Sarah.
Brianna, the youngest member of the Stouty clan, a tender 12 years old. Too young to drive, but old enough to drink her mother's poison, antifreeze, in her root beer.
They were going to kill the little girl as well?
12-year-old girl.
What's wrong with these people?
And what was the reason for Brianna?
Because I know there's no way in hell I'd be able to take care of her. I can't take care of me. So how could I ever take care of her?
She had described Brianna as a burden they didn't want around the house. That was her explanation.
4 people? They would have killed 4 people in this house if they could have?
Correct. Rachel said that her mother was the only one that understood her. They could relate to each other, and it was just going to be those 2.
Do you think this was just a case of a mom and daughter who just, in some sick way, wanted to have a simpler life?
I don't think that there's going to be any acceptable, remotely rational explanation. The question is, how could this have possibly happened?
Did the police blow this thing? Could they have prevented Sarah's poisoning by connecting these dots?
I think it's easy to go back now, and there was nothing at that point to indicate anything malicious. Neither one of them knew about the other.
When you have physical findings at the autopsy that match the story that was given, typically other organs aren't looked at microscopically.
Saying antifreeze is difficult to detect unless you're looking for it. Later tests did confirm that Sean's body had the presence of that killer chemical, ethylene glycol, found in antifreeze. That news came a bit late for Sarah. Still, she's learned to accept her new reality, living in an assisted care facility, more alone than ever.
Do you still consider them family?
Not anymore. I consider them as killers who hate me.
You're angry.
I just felt like I want to slap both of them and calling them B words.
Their family plot uncovered, perhaps it's no surprise that mother-daughter murderers would eventually turn on each other. And sure enough, Rachel made a last-ditch effort to save herself with a plea deal.
Reaction to a guilty plea from Rachel Stouty, the Springfield woman charged with poisoning 3 of her family members.
Throwing her mom under the bus.
That's crucial. The fact that her daughter has pled guilty, seems ready to testify, could in and of itself be enough to convict her and potentially send her to death row.
When we come back, Diane Stouty in court. And for the first time, the daughter she poisoned coming face to face with her sister and mommy dearest.
And what would you say to Rachel and to your mom?
Stay with us.
"2020 Saturday" continues.
Judgment Day for Diane Stouty. She enters the courtroom, her back against the wall, facing death by lethal injection. But then...
You intend to enter a plea of guilty in this case?
Yes. Pleading guilty to killing her husband and son. Sentenced to life in prison without parole. Also in court, in the front row, the daughter she tried to kill, 24-year-old Sarah, facing her mom who poisoned her with antifreeze.
I'd prefer to be a survivor than a victim. She not only took away my dad and brother, but she took away my independence.
Callous to the end, Diane never bothering to look at her damaged daughter. Yet weeks later, when it's Rachel's turn to be sentenced, she dissolves into tears, reading a statement to her sister.
I'm sorry that I couldn't find the courage to stand up for what was right. Your suffering could have been prevented. And I hate myself for not being there for you.
And yet for all the pain and loss, today Sarah says she harbors no ill will.
I forgive my...
On the 19th of June 2014, in the early hours of the morning, emergency services received a 999 call. The police and paramedics arrived in Cook Street. They found a young man propped up against one of the walls. About his person, they found a small brown bottle of liquid.
His pants were back to front. There was blood in his mouth. He was cold, so he would have been dead for some time. It's highly unusual for a young person of that age to just collapse and die.
There's going to be immediate questions. How did they end up here? Who are they? Where have they been? But also, who was the person that called 999? And where are they now?
When Ryan Edwards moved to a new flat in 2005, he was keen to become part of the local community.
When I first moved to Barking, it was seen as, you know, not a very trendy area of London. It was not known as a particularly gay area. I felt like I was the only gay in the village, effectively.
Soon after moving in, Ryan introduced himself to his neighbour, Stephen Port, a 30-year-old chef.
I think we quickly established that we were both gay. We said we'd meet for a coffee sometime, and we swapped numbers. Stephen was very softly spoken, and he came across to me as a pretty harmless soul. He reminded me actually a little bit of the BFG, the Big Friendly Giant. He was very, very tall and slightly sort of lumbering.
In search of a more vibrant gay scene, the new friends planned nights out further afield.
It was at that time that I found Stephen's interaction with people really limiting. He was very socially awkward. When I tried to introduce people to him, he'd get his phone out and almost ignore them.
Stephen Port, as an adult, was quite an odd person. He was very, very childlike. He could be quite naive. First of all, his type was much younger than him, skinny, what is known in the gay community as a twink. He would like them to look a lot younger.
Stephen would often say to me, oh, hey neighbour, come round for a coffee and meet my new guy. And this was several times a week. He was in his 30s, he was a little bit older than myself. And so these young guys he was introducing to me were sometimes quite young, you know, obviously over the age of consent, but I thought to myself sometimes, not very much.
Despite his quirks, Stephen Port proved popular on the dating scene.
He was often meeting men, and I remember thinking at the time, how was he meeting these guys? I quickly realised that he was finding a lot of guys online.
If you're a shy person like Stephen Port, it's very attractive to have access to dating apps. He doesn't have to go into a well-lit bar and try and charm somebody and make a fool of himself.
Online profiles allow you to create a curated image of yourself. The danger with online is that you never truly know who you're talking to.
Emergency ambulance, what's the address of the emergency?
Cook Street, there's a young boy, he looks like he's collapsed or anesthesia or something. Always just drunk.
What's the telephone number you're calling from?
I'm just pulling up in the car, I've got to get my card on the park.
Right, don't worry about that. What's the telephone number you're calling from? Hello?
A call goes into the ambulance service on June the 19th, right from the off, sounding very suspicious. Somebody didn't want to give their details, then when they were asked for details, rung off.
The police don't seem to have a lot of information to go off in this case, but they do have one thing, which is the phone number from the 999 call.
When you find a dead body, you need to be making sure you speak to the witnesses, because they could be a suspect, they could be an innocent person, but you need to find that information out.
Police discovered the 999 caller was Stephen Port. Officers were dispatched to his flat in Cook Street.
Stephen Port gives his account that he found a young person outside making gargling noises. He slapped him, moved the body. I mean, all of that is slightly different from the account he gave to the 999 call. The alarm bells would have been ringing.
In his statement, Port tells police that he went to bed after calling 999.
Stephen Port's claim that he went inside and went to sleep contradicts the 999 call itself.
Hello? Hello, the ambulance service. Well, the customer there. Just confirm the location.
Oh, I'm just doing it right now.
It is incredibly suspicious that there are already inconsistencies in two accounts from a single individual in relation to a young man's death.
The police had identified the young man as Anthony Walgate. a 23-year-old student from Hull. The toxicology report later confirmed Anthony had died from a GHB overdose.
GHB is one of those drugs that is known to be used in something called chemsex. Chemsex is sexual activity enhanced by taking drugs, essentially. And GHB can be used consensually by people, but it can also be very dangerous, and in some cases it can result in fatalities.
Berkeley and Dagenham Police would be responsible for this investigation at this stage, and as there's more and more suspicion comes up there, you'd expect them to bring in the experts, because they don't have the expertise to deal with homicide investigations.
Specialist officers from the Major Investigations Team were brought in and determined Anthony Walgate's death to be unexplained, leaving local officers to continue with inquiries.
Anthony's mother did not accept the narrative that the police had accepted. She was very bravely saying to police, have you checked this? Have you done this?
Anthony's friends were also suspicious and came forward with more information about his occasional work as an escort.
Friends of Anthony told the police that he was working as an escort on the night that he died. He had agreed a fee of £800 for one night to meet a man who had signed off as Joe Dean.
He looked after himself. He sent details of people he was meeting, the location, the pictures to friends, so friends could keep an eye on him and ensure that his safety.
Anthony's friends gave police the name and address they'd received from him on the night of his death.
Police discover that Joe Dean, in fact, is Stephen Port, and all the pieces of the jigsaw are coming together. Stephen Port was clearly the last person who saw Anthony alive.
7 days after the discovery of Anthony Walgate's body, police arrested Stephen Port on suspicion of perverting the course of justice for deliberately misleading the police investigation. Port's laptop was seized from his flat.
Stephen Port's laptop would have the history between the interactions between him and Anthony. It may have videos, it may have photographs, text. There's a real richness of potential information, evidence that could have been gathered. There's clearly inconsistencies in this story, and he's not been telling the truth.
Port was questioned about his fake identity of Joe Dean.
Stephen Port admitted to police that he had hired Anthony Walgate as an escort. He claimed they had consensual sex, that Anthony had brought GHB with him, and he took that voluntarily.
Port claimed that he'd moved Anthony outside when he'd been unable to wake him from a deep sleep.
His account in the interview is that the reason why he moved the body is because he thought that the suspicion would fall on him that he'd actually murdered Anthony.
Port is trying to present this scared and timid character that didn't tell the police out of shame and fear, I think to try and buy some sympathy from the police. But now finding out that Port actually had had sex with Anthony, found him dead, moved his body, and then went back to sleep, that has to suggest some very alarming behaviours from this man.
Port is charged but released on bail. His laptop is not analysed. Neighbour Ryan, who was unaware of Port's involvement in the case, had started to notice changes in Stephen's behaviour as his obsession with dating apps continued.
I went around there and he was looking a bit rough, and I was taken aback because there was a really large container sat on the coffee table, and it was full of white bags and little vials of, I think, a clear liquid. He did get his boy, as he would call them, out of the bedroom and to meet me, but the guy was clearly under the influence of something. When I quizzed Stephen on this, I recall he said some guys like to have some to spice up, you know, the sex life in the bedroom, so it's no big deal, neighbour, it's completely under control.
On August 24th, Ryan was introduced to another young man Port had met online.
I think I met Gabriel on the first day he moved in to Stevens. Stephen said to me, "Oh, hey neighbour, come around for a coffee, meet my new guy." Gabriel immediately struck me as someone a bit different to Stephen's normal type. He was an aspiring artist, really bright, articulate, intelligent young man.
Gabriel Kovari was Slovakian by birth. He had moved to London in his early 20s. He makes contact online with Stephen Port, who says that he can stay at his flat on the sofa for free.
A day later, Gabriel and Stephen visited Ryan's flat. When Stephen left the room, Gabriel confided in Ryan about his new landlord.
Gabriel kind of leant into me and whispered to me to say, "Ryan, Stephen is not the person you think he is. He's not a nice person." And obviously that was really disturbing to hear, but I couldn't kind of investigate that and what was meant by that further because Stephen came back. But I thought at that point, okay, well, perhaps Gabriel's idea of staying at Stephen's and Stephen's idea of Gabriel staying is different. I messaged Gabriel to say, if you're uncomfortable at Stephen's for whatever reason, you're more than welcome to stay at mine for a couple of nights until you find somewhere longer term. And Gabriel said, "Oh yeah, great, let me get back to you." And he didn't.
When Gabriel failed to reply, Ryan messaged Port in search of answers.
Initially, it was that, oh, Gabriel's left. I think he's gone to stay with some sort of army guy, I don't know, but I'm a bit worried. I wouldn't let this go because it was still sitting quite uneasily with me. And he said, "Oh, I haven't heard anything. Do you think I should go to the police?" And I remember thinking to myself, okay, well, this is a bit odd. And I said, well, you know, maybe if you think that's best, but it's only been a few days. Maybe he'll get back in touch with you.
3 days after Gabriel's disappearance, a local dog walker discovered the body of a young man slumped against a wall in St. Margaret's churchyard.
The dog walker talks about the body being propped with their back against a wall, wearing sunglasses, a bit of a wonky position on their head and covering their eyes.
Police identified the man as Gabriel Kovari, and the pathology report later determined the cause of death to be a GHB overdose.
You've got another young person just a very short distance away from where Anthony's body was found. I think you'd be asking a few questions around why this has happened.
Friends and family of Gabriel flagged their concerns to police, but within 5 hours of discovering his body, Gabriel's death was classified as unexplained but not suspicious.
I think there was some stereotypes around people, young gay men, stereotyping about the drug scene within the gay community, so I think the police had come to that conclusion and weren't really prepared to entertain other potential scenarios.
2 weeks after meeting Gabriel, Ryan finally received news on his disappearance from Stephen.
He said, "Oh, neighbour, something really tragic has happened. I've heard that Gabriel went home, contracted a mysterious illness and has died. And whatever you do, please don't mention this on social media because I don't want to upset his friends and family even more than they are."
The discovery of Gabriel's body goes unreported in the local press, and no information is released to the LGBT community by police. Ryan didn't hear about Gabriel's overdose.
I remember thinking at the time, this is really unusual. Young people that seem to be healthy don't just pick up viruses and die. But with the lack of any evidence to the contrary, I had to kind of take Stephen's word at face value.
On September 18th, 2014, another young man went missing. He is 21-year-old Daniel Whitworth.
I'd met Daniel probably at the end of 2011 through Adam, his father, who I'd just recently met and was starting to date. It actually felt quite nice coming into the family. I felt like I'd gained a son. You know, I thought he was a really nice lad. He had real ambition, and he was very much like his dad in looks and in personality in a lot of ways. A very, very gentle lad.
Daniel, an up-and-coming chef, lived in Kent with his long-term boyfriend.
We never worried too much about the boys. We knew they were looking after themselves, everything was fine.
Concerned that Daniel hadn't arrived home, his partner contacted Mandy.
They used to fight like most couples, you know, they had their down times. The worry really settled in when he hadn't attended work. Daniel always went to work. Nothing stopped Daniel from going to work. All we could do was wait to hear. It's a horrible, horrible place to be in. Terrible place to be in.
2 days after Daniel went missing, the same dog walker made another shocking discovery in St. Margaret's churchyard.
Police arrived at the scene to this dead body. They find a man wrapped in a blue sheet. They find a note in a plastic cellophane cover. And then they find a bottle with some liquid in it.
I answered the door to 2 policemen who immediately removed their hats. It was just a massively sinking feeling. They said they'd found him deceased in a churchyard in Barking, and it appeared as though he'd taken his own life. There are no words to describe that. They said it looked like an overdose, and there was a note found. He'd left a suicide note. We wanted to see the note because as parents, you are hanging on to every little word.
Police sent a portion of the note to the Whitworths on an email to confirm Daniel's handwriting.
We communicate via text. I don't see Daniel's handwriting. You're going to get samples of his handwriting from his workplace, from his home. You need to go and have a look. We don't know. We can't verify that.
Daniel's family reported being unable to confirm the handwriting, but it was later revealed to have been marked as verified by officers.
That note then has a legitimacy with the police and with the investigation team as a genuine note.
The contents of the note also raised concerns for Daniel's family.
The note makes several claims. It says that he has taken all of the GHB that he has on him because he feels guilty about the death of somebody who in the note is referred to as Gabriel Edeen.
Nobody knew who Gabriel was. There were questions galore, and our heads were spinning.
The story in the note is that the pair were having sex with the use of drugs, so chemsex, and Daniel got carried away and gave Gabriel some more GHB, and he didn't notice that Gabriel had stopped breathing while they were having sex.
And we said, well, Daniel, don't do drugs. And we knew he didn't do that, and we knew he certainly wouldn't do anything like that.
The note says that he's feeling dizzy now and that he dropped his mobile phone. So you have this impression that he must be writing this note either on that spot or as he's walking up to that spot. And at some point he feels the need to say, BTW, by the way, please do not blame the guy I was with last night. He knows nothing of what I have done.
Despite the mention of another man in the note, the police did not go on to investigate his identity.
Why would you worry about what happened after you've gone to somebody else? You know, it was just mind-blowing. And the first thing we said was, this says nothing of Daniel. Nothing in this note says anything of Daniel.
the Whitworths continue to raise their concerns about the credibility of the note with police.
Because you expect the police to be doing their job, you've got nothing but their word to take. How do you even begin to work your way out of a situation where so much information depends on one organisation and you can't feed into it?
On the same day Daniel's body was discovered, his death was classified as non-suspicious by the duty inspector.
The police decide to close down the crime scene fairly quickly, and there just didn't seem to be that professional curiosity.
There is this pattern emerging. This suicide note is actually identifying that it could be through someone else administering the drug that they died. And if they'd followed that line of investigation, they'd have discovered that it was true. Someone else had been administering those drugs, but it wasn't Daniel.
3 young men had been found dead in as many months in East London.
As soon as you know that there are 3 bodies found within 400 yards of one another, they're all a similar age, all who have died of a drugs overdose, there are really worrying signs of suspicious activity.
Is there somebody targeting gay men? Is there something around the drugs that these men are taking?
It's a matter of public concern and safety.
Journalists posed the question to Barking and Dagenham police to find out if the deaths were being linked or treated as suspicious.
I think they were pretty astounded when the police told local journalists that none of those deaths were connected. They were unusual but not suspicious.
9 months after his arrest, Stephen Port was sentenced to 8 months imprisonment for perverting the course of justice. He was not under suspicion for the death of Anthony Walgate, and no connection had been made between him and the other 2 victims. Neighbour Ryan, who was unaware of Stephen's conviction, was struggling to contact him.
I messaged Stephen a few times and didn't get a response, which was kind of unusual, so I messaged one of his friends. I got a very vague response back from this friend that something had happened, Stephen had got, involved in something he shouldn't and was in prison.
Port served just 2 months and 13 days of the sentence and was released on tag.
I think on a new number, Stephen messages me. Obviously, I say to Stephen, what's happened? What's been happening? And he replies back something very vague, but a neighbour, it was a silly mistake of mine that has kind of cost me dearly. And so then I looked back at my experiences and thought, okay, my concerns with the large quantity of drugs that Stephen had on his coffee table, then yes, he was dealing.
In June 2015, a coroner's inquest was held into the deaths of Gabriel Kavari and Daniel Whitworth, 9 months after their bodies were found.
I think for the families it was the last bastion of hope in terms of having more information coming to the public domain.
The coroner raised concerns about forensic analysis carried out on the bedsheet Daniel was found in.
A police officer at the inquest was asked about the bedsheet being tested or not tested. And he said something along the lines of the reason to test it would have been obviously to determine who he was with the night before, in case that helped. But he said something like that wasn't put forward or pursued at the time.
And that was a significant and clear failure on the part of the police. It just beggars belief why they didn't do it.
Things were just glaringly obvious then that things had been missed. The job hadn't been done.
Questions were asked about the suicide note, a key piece of evidence in the investigation.
The note had never been shown to his partner, and the family says that they never gave that assurance that it was definitely Daniel's handwriting. No fingerprints or DNA analysis of the sleeve that the suicide note was in, and the suicide note itself. No handwriting analysis.
I thought it was something that they'd slipped the note into to protect it when they gave it to us to read. Everything just came crashing down in my head. How could he possibly slip that in a plastic cover, having passed out writing his own note?
The coroner recorded an open verdict for the deaths of both Gabriel Cavari and Daniel Whitworth.
Because she couldn't say for sure that Daniel had taken his own life from the information she'd been given, it was left open. So I remember thinking, great, we can have another go.
If you've got a suicide note at an inquest and the coroner's not convinced it was suicide, that should set alarm bells ringing. The police, I think, should carry on investigating those deaths, but they didn't. They did not at that time treat those deaths as suspicious.
Even though we'd been presented with all this new information, we weren't allowed to go back over it. That was it. I felt gutted.
The family are left with lots of unanswered questions, but actually the matter is concluded and there's not a lot of things they can do from now on.
I left that inquest knowing that we were nowhere near finished. They might have been finished with us, but we weren't finished with them.
12 weeks later, the case took another turn when police in Barking were called to a familiar location.
On the 14th of September 2015, a fourth body was found close to St Margaret's Church.
The body was found on the other side of the wall from where Gabriel and Daniel's bodies were discovered. The similarities didn't end there.
He didn't have his phone, and there was a small bottle around his body. There were signs that he had died of a drugs overdose.
The young man was identified as 25-year-old Jack Taylor. Police believed he had likely died of an overdose. His family were informed.
His family were devastated, obviously, when they found out. And the sisters of Jack Taylor were also shocked at the conclusion that the police had come to. Their brother wasn't known for doing drugs. As a forklift truck driver, he would have had to submit to regular drugs tests.
Unconvinced by the police investigation into the death of their brother, sisters Donna and Jen took matters into their own hands.
Jack's sisters basically found out that there was two other men who'd been found in the cemetery. Then they found out about Anthony, who was found 400 metres away. So Jack Taylor was the fourth young person to have died in suspicious circumstances in this area. And I think they then demanded that the police did more.
Donna and Jen did a lot of work, especially for people grieving, a lot of very impressive work to join dots that the police were not joining. What we know is that during his night out, in the early hours of the morning, he was on a dating app and they arranged to meet at, I think, about 3 a.m. at Barking train station.
The sisters presented their findings to police, appealing for further investigations to be carried out.
Jack's sisters had a similar experience dealing with the police at Barking and Dagenham to what the other families had had. All the families were doing their own research, sharing information with the police, and the police just had dismissed it.
Jack's sisters discovered CCTV cameras where Jack had been on the night of his death and requested the footage from police.
Donna and Jen watched the CCTV and there was a man next to Jack Taylor, considerably taller than Jack Taylor, sort of looming. And they obviously wanted to know who that man was.
Jack's sisters demanded that the images be released to the media to try and identify the man in the CCTV.
The police were not enthusiastic about releasing the footage. They didn't seem to understand the urgency, the starkness of how wrong their conclusions seemed to the sisters. And it's only because the family was so tenacious and dogged that the footage ended up getting released.
It's actually a Barking police officer who recognises the man in the image as Stephen Port. He remembers him from his involvement in Anthony's case, where Stephen was arrested for perverting the course of justice. And now, at last, a thread starts to form between these multiple cases.
There's the ambulance. What's the address of the emergency?
Cook Street. There's a young boy who got his caps outside. I don't know.
What's the telephone number you're calling from?
I'm just holding up in the car. I've got to get my card on the park.
That's all right, don't worry about that. What's the telephone number you're calling from? Hello?
You have to wonder why it is that Port even made that call to 999. Was it that he was trying to alleviate some of the guilt he felt for what had happened? Or was it simply that he was trying to regain some control over the situation?
On the 15th of October, Stephen Port was arrested on suspicion of murdering Anthony Walgate, Gabriel Cavari, Daniel Whitworth, and Jack Taylor. The major investigations team took over the case, searching Port's flat and seizing his laptop and mobile phone.
Stephen Port's flat in Cook Street, it was odd. I mean, loads of children's toys, loads of porn, homemade videos on his phone.
Police finally conduct a proper search of Stephen Port's laptop and mobiles. They discover 83 videos, some of them include him.
A couple of streets away from me.
This is Jack Taylor. Do you recognise that man?
He denied knowing Jack Taylor, but there's CCTV footage of him walking with him.
So you don't recognise his face?
I do not know. No.
And I mean, that's Jack Taylor, so you don't recognise Jack Taylor?
No.
I mean, it would be risible were it not so outrageous. It's such an obviously stupid thing for someone in his position to say.
3 of the 4 people that have been found dead were found slumped up against the wall here of the Abbey. Pardon?
Yeah, I didn't know that.
You didn't know that? So that's news to you, is it? Did you put them there?
No.
And Stephen, did you write this letter?
No, I didn't.
Photos of it was found with Daniel. Are you telling us the truth, Stephen?
I'm telling you the truth, yes.
About the letter?
Yes.
With a compelling body of evidence against him, Port was charged with the murder of all 4 men, and a date for trial was set.
I was hanging on to every fibre of my being for the fight ahead of me, because he cannot walk. He cannot walk away from this one after a few measly years. It can't happen.
On October 5th, 2016, Stephen Port went on trial.
The real education came at the Old Bailey. All the families met each other. Everybody was in their own personal nightmare.
Port was charged with 4 counts of murder, multiple rapes and sexual assaults. He pleaded not guilty.
What was jarring about that is he sat there acting like he's been called up on a bit of graffiti or something, and he was just like bored. He was just looking around the room.
He never made eye contact with me, and he was bold and bolshy and joked with the policeman that he was chained to, and smiled a lot and made me hate him even more.
The court heard evidence from the analysis of Port's laptop and search history.
the type of search terms used painted a picture of drug rape pornography, which was really powerful evidence for the jury to understand Stephen Port's motivation.
This is someone who's clearly motivated and obsessively engaging with very graphic, very violent, extreme pornographic content, and essentially taking that fantasy into a reality.
The horrific reality of Port's fantasy was played for the jury in court.
A video from his own hard drive that shows him engaging in sexual activities with an unconscious man. Port denies this and says that this was purely the end result of quote-unquote normal sex.
One of the obvious defenses for Stephen Port is that this is just a terrible accident, and he never intended to kill or cause really serious harm.
Now, that is such a wild assertion, because even if it could be some form of defense for a singular occurrence, for this to happen 4 times over the course of a matter of months suggests that even if they were accidental, that there was such a careless disregard for human life that it is equated with murder anyway.
Surviving victims came forward at trial to testify against Stephen Port.
The prosecution did a fantastic job of just going through painstakingly every allegation that was made against him. There's some incredibly brave witnesses who came to court and told their stories.
The jury had evidence from near misses, people who had had drugs administered by Port, and the jury could hear live evidence of what effect it had on those victims.
After a 7-week trial, Port was found guilty of murdering all 4 men and multiple sexual assaults. He was later sentenced to a whole life tariff without parole.
There was lots of tears, lots of hugs, lots of relief, all the emotions you can think of, really. I mean, this man, I don't want to call him a man, he's not a man, but it will die in prison. And for that, I am eternally grateful.
The judge told Stephen Port that he carried out the murders to satisfy his lust for sex with men he'd rendered unconscious, describing his attempt to cover up 2 of the murders as wicked and monstrous.
A bittersweet moment for the families. On the one hand, they're getting justice, but on the other hand, as each case unravelled, they would have seen significant shortcomings in the police investigation.
The way we loosely put it was, look, we're going to have to sue the police afterwards. We know it won't bring him back, but people have to be held accountable.
Would their boys still be alive if their concerns had been taken seriously, if the police had investigated properly? The families of Stephen Port's victims hoping, finally, for answers as the inquests into their deaths open this morning.
It's very important that these inquests happen and that the police had to submit themselves, essentially, to the scrutiny of open justice.
The inadequate investigation by the Metropolitan Police into the deaths of Anthony, Gabriel, Daniel and Jack should be on public record as one of the most widespread institutional failings in modern history.
The police's primary position appeared to be that they were operating within a very tight budgetary system with a reduction in staffing, that this was not institutional prejudice, but it was gross incompetence.
After 2 months of hearing the evidence, an inquest jury determined that the deaths of Gabriel, Daniel and Jack could probably have been prevented had the initial investigations by the Met been better.
It is a devastating finding.
Our thoughts are with everybody who loved these young men. We are so sorry for their loss. I give my own and the Met's heartfelt apologies. It's very important now to show that we are trustworthy, that we care, that we have changed, and that we are learning, so that we can work with every person and every community to help protect them.
It's one of the only cases I've ever seen where I've tried to play devil's advocate for the police in my head, and it just falls flat every time. It's astounding how badly wrong Barking and Dagenham police got this.
I think you have to pay credit to the families because they persevered. If it hadn't been for their actions, Stephen Port would have carried on committing offences.
On the day she disappears, high school teacher Tara Grinstead spends the afternoon with some of her students. They're preparing for the Miss Georgia Sweet Potato Pageant, a big event in a small, close-knit town like Ocilla, Georgia.
On that Saturday, Tara had helped a lot of the girls prepare for the pageant. She had done their hair and their makeup.
A lot of them borrowed her dresses as well. And she had so much fun. She had a really good time with the girls. You know, they had snacks and had lunch.
Tara has an especially close relationship with many of her students.
I never heard anybody say a bad thing about Tara. They related really well to her. She always went the extra mile to help her kids, and she made class so much fun.
Most of Tara's students would say, well, she's my teacher, but she's also my friend.
Tara has been involved in beauty pageants since her high school years, but has her own agenda about the competitions.
Pageanting was not for show and not for everybody to tell her she's beautiful. I think it gave her self-confidence, number one. I think it bettered her self-esteem.
Contestant number 2.
In 1999, Tara won the title of Miss Tifton, Georgia. That victory gave her the opportunity to compete in the Miss Georgia pageant.
Once you accomplish one of your dreams, I mean, how often do you get to do that? And she did by going to Miss Georgia.
Tara doesn't win the Miss Georgia pageant, but her family says that for her, winning was never the most important thing.
I never saw in her that winning a pageant was an ego thing. It was not about just the title of winning. It was always about accomplishing something.
Tara's goal had always been education. She succeeds in funding her entire undergraduate education with money earned from pageants.
She knew college is expensive and it was going to be tough on her, and she did not want to burden her mother any more than she had to.
After getting her bachelor's degree in education, Tara works full-time and takes graduate classes at night, working steadily toward her ultimate goal, a PhD in education.
She had gotten a 6-year degree in administration, and that was what she was pursuing her doctorate in. I think she eventually wanted to be a high school principal.
That Saturday night, a happy and relaxed Tara leaves the sweet potato pageant and heads over to a cookout attended by friends from school.
Tara stayed at the cookout for about 2 hours and left at approximately 11 o'clock p.m., ostensibly to go home.
She said she was going to watch the video of the pageant, and then she was going to go to bed.
In a small town like Ocilla, neighbors look out for each other. Because she lives alone, Tara and her next-door neighbors have a system for saying, "I'm home and all is well."
Every night when she came home, the first thing she would do was go into her room and turn on the lamp in the bedroom. The neighbors would look out and they would see that lamp on, and it would kind of be a signal to them, well, Tara's made it home.
That night, the light in Tara's window never goes on. The next day, nobody sees Tara. No one is able to contact her, including her mother.
The more that she called and the longer the time went on that Tara didn't call her back, she started to get concerned.
Sometimes people just want to be left alone. But I can't imagine her ever ignoring her mother's phone call.
On Monday morning, Tara doesn't show up to teach her classes at Irwin County High School. Friends and family know that something is very wrong.
That was a red flag for me because I knew what a dedicated teacher Tara was.
Tara had never missed a day of school without prearranging a substitute teacher.
One of Tara's friends calls Ocilla Police Chief Billy Hancock.
He indicated to me that Tara had not been seen over the last day, that if the school had been contacted, she had not shown up there.
Chief Hancock arrives at Tara's residence at approximately 10 a.m. on Monday. Her car is parked in its usual spot under the carport.
The fact that her car was there and she wasn't meant that she probably left with someone.
The doors of the car are unlocked. Oddly, there is an envelope containing $100 in cash left in the center console.
I would think it'd be unusual for anybody to leave that amount of cash in the car and leave it unlocked.
That's not like Tara to have money laying around any place.
Inside Tara's house, however, everything looks fairly normal.
There was no sign of forcible entry. There was no clear indication that any kind of struggle had occurred inside.
Both the exterior and interior of Tara's residence are photographed in detail.
Every room was photographed thoroughly to capture, what the condition of the house was at the time of our arrival.
Clothing and accessories scattered around the floor help police reconstruct some of Tara's last known movements.
The clothes Tara was wearing on the night of October 22nd were on the floor in her bedroom, which indicated to us that she had indeed arrived home. Her bed appeared as if possibly somebody had either slept in it or laid in it.
Her cell phone was in the charger. It was still there in the charger. And to us, it indicates that she left the house with intentions of coming back. She knew she wasn't going to be gone long enough to have use of her cell phone.
Investigators locate more intriguing clues outside Tara's house. A business card is wedged into her front door. They find something far more disturbing on the ground.
Initial law enforcement officers who arrived immediately spotted a latex glove lying in the grass in the front yard, several feet away from the front door.
Then I really got scared.
For investigators, the latex glove is an ominous indicator of foul play.
It certainly indicated to us that there was a strong likelihood that a crime had occurred. It would imply that whoever was using it was trying to avoid being detected.
The latex glove's not something that all of us have. I think somebody had it very specifically so that they would not leave a trace.
Our gut feeling upon processing Tara's residence was that a crime had occurred.
Coming up, police investigate the men in Tara's life and uncover some troubling leads.
She gave me the impression that he was not stable.
30-year-old high school teacher Tara Grinstead has vanished.
I have never known Tara to just take off without letting somebody know. I'm not aware of any time that she ever did that. Everybody might not know, but somebody always knew where she was.
By the time local police arrive at her residence, nobody has seen or heard from Tara for almost 2 days.
Everybody knew that she just had not, gone off for a couple of days, that something had happened, something serious had happened to Tara.
Due to the urgent nature of the case, Ocilla Police request the assistance of the Georgia Bureau of Investigation.
When a person goes missing and we're asked to investigate, we operate with the premise that we're going to presume the worst and hope for the best.
To investigators, a latex glove found near Tara's front door makes it look like someone was attempting to cover up a crime.
Either there was an abduction of Tara in which someone wore gloves, or they returned to the scene and accidentally dropped a glove.
Besides the glove, police have few indications that a crime took place.
To us, there was no clear sign of a struggle. However, that doesn't affect how you proceed in an investigation, because there can be an abduction with no indication of a struggle. It'd be quite easy to take someone out of their house at gunpoint and there'd be no disturbance whatsoever.
My gut feeling is that somebody came by and she left with someone that she knew, and that something horrible happened after that.
Tara's family begins to fear that they might not ever see her again. Meanwhile, the lack of a crime scene presents a daunting challenge to investigators.
In a typical criminal investigation, you have an outcome against which you can measure evidence and theories. In a missing persons case, you don't have that outcome, so you can't measure anything against anything. Everything remains in play.
Law enforcement seals Tara's house and takes her car and the latex glove in for evidence processing.
We actually had a crime lab scientist on the phone immediately who was preparing a plan as to how to handle that latex glove to maximize the possibility of the recovery of evidence.
Tara has been missing for 12 hours. That evening, at Irwin County High School, students and teachers band together in an effort to find her.
The first flyer that was made just basically had a picture of Tara and just had the words missing on it. It just described her height and weight and color of her hair and her eyes.
The students are coming up and they're like, you know, what can we do? We can't just stand around. And I was so touched that, you know, these kids did that. And, you know, they did this until like 1 o'clock in the morning.
Tara's fellow teachers and students design and then distribute hundreds of flyers throughout the Ocilla area.
Posters were everywhere in this community. I mean, they were on light poles, in business windows, on cars, just almost everywhere imaginable.
Georgia Bureau of Investigation agents interview all of Tara's neighbors and conduct an extensive search of her neighborhood.
Also, some tracking dogs were brought in to try to see if they could pick up on any kind of scent of Tara, to see if she had gone somewhere on foot that we might be able to find her.
Both the canvas and the search dogs turn up nothing of value to investigators. Searching for clues, they delve deeply into Tara's background.
You learn as much about the victim as you can, their timeline, their propensities, their associates.
They learn that Tara's circle of acquaintances was huge, from her second job at a department store makeup counter to the various campuses where she took graduate classes.
She had been going to school at night for several years, working on her master's and her specialist degree, so that involved a lot of students that she had met that obviously we would not know.
But it is closer to home that investigators uncover a deeper mystery.
A lot of disappearance cases, you kind of have an immediate focus. You have, you know, a close associate, a boyfriend, or what have you, ex-husband, husband. In this case, what we learned was Tara had several such associates.
Looking into Tara's personal life, they find a complex series of relationships with men.
Tara was involved romantically with several different persons in a close period of time, and she kept those relationships separate from one another.
Investigators focus first on Tara's ex-boyfriend, Marcus Harper.
Tara had a long-term romantic relationship with Marcus Harper. They had broken up approximately a year earlier. Tara had ended the relationship because she believed Marcus wasn't ready to get married.
Investigators learn that Harper served in the Ocilla Police Department for 4 years and then enlisted in the United States Army Rangers in 2001.
She's very proud of him and what he accomplished because he was really good at what he did.
Investigators from the GBI conduct a series of interviews with Marcus Harper.
We interviewed Marcus Harper the very first day and talked to him several times after that.
Over the years that the couple was together, Tara's friends and family got to know Marcus well.
They really looked like a great couple. I mean, he was big and strong, and she was, you know, they were like a really good couple, and I think that they enjoyed each other.
Anytime that we were around Marcus, we had a very good relationship with him. He was always very respectful to us. He was always respectful to Tara when we were with them.
Anita Gaddis sees her sister's relationship with Marcus quite differently.
Tara was a little bit afraid of him. You know, he's been an Army Ranger, and the training that they have is just unbelievable. The things that they can do, the things that they survive. And we stayed in touch with him during his training, and I know what he was able to survive. So I know what the guy's made of.
Despite the differing perceptions within her family, investigators find no history of violence in Tara and Marcus's relationship. But they discover that several months before she disappeared, Tara did experience the threat of violence at the hands of one of her former students.
had gone over to her house one afternoon in March of 2005. He wanted to speak to her.
The 20-year-old graduated from Irwin County High School the previous year. After taking Tara's history class, he developed a fondness for her.
They had a closer relationship upon his graduation. He would speak to her and see her from time to time.
I just thought it was, one of her students that had, a crush on Tara because she was so beautiful and so sweet to all of her students. And he was the soul that Tara would have wanted to help.
But according to friends, Tara had expressed concern about her former student's behavior.
She had told me she'd been having trouble with him, like kind of getting a little too attached to her or whatever, and kind of got an impression that he was not stable.
Months before Tara disappeared, he came to her house and tried to physically force his way inside.
He wanted to speak to her, and she didn't want to talk to him at that time, and she wouldn't let him in the house, and he became quite upset, loud, began yelling and banging on her door, trying to gain entry.
That was a very violent situation. Neighbors actually had to call the police because he was so loud.
I was yelling and screaming through the door and banging on the door, and she gave me the impression that he acted like he was not himself.
Coming up, in the weeks before she disappears, Tara's personal life begins to unravel.
She called hysterically. I said, Tara, are you okay? You are not thinking about suicide.
Grinstead has been missing for 24 hours. Agents from the Georgia Bureau of Investigation learn that 7 months earlier, one of Tara's former students appeared uninvited at her home and tried to force his way inside.
He wanted to speak to her. She did not come to the door. He began to bang on the door. Basically, there started to become a disturbance.
I don't know if he read some signals wrong or if he just had a crush on her that he took too far.
I believe she just thought he might go away, but I think she realized that he wasn't going away, so she came to the door. They spoke briefly, and I think she tried to go back inside. She then started to shut her door, and he grabbed her on the arm. She pulled away and was able to shut the door.
At the time, Ocilla police are unable to get the former student to calm down, so he is arrested for disorderly conduct. According to Tara's handwritten statement to police, he invaded my privacy in my own home. While doing so in a raging and out-of-control manner, I was very scared for my well-being, as well as concerned about him.
His actions at the house did concern us, that there was some sort of a connection between he and Tara.
She never told me that she had any kind of inappropriate relationship with him. I don't think she did.
Still, the former student's strange behavior is reason enough for investigators to look for a connection with Tara's disappearance.
We thought it critical to interview him immediately. He was working at a job in Milledgeville, Georgia, about 100 miles away, and we immediately had an agent in that area find him.
The former student is able to account for his time on the night that Tara disappeared. Meanwhile, investigators keep digging into Marcus Harper and his relationship with Tara. In February of 2002, Marcus was deployed to Afghanistan. According to her sister, the separation and distance became difficult for Tara to deal with.
She said she really could not stay in that kind of relationship because if they go overseas and something bad happens to them, you never find them, nobody knows anything.
I could tell after that things changed a lot for them. He changed and their relationship changed. But she just didn't want to quit. She loved him.
Tara and Marcus end their relationship, but remain in close contact.
They still saw each other occasionally. They still talked and emailed and called. And so Tara took that as there was still some kind of relationship.
Then, 3 weeks before Tara disappears, Marcus returns home to Ocilla, but doesn't contact her.
He had not told Tara he was home. Tara found out that he was back in Ocilla in Irwin County from a third party, and that made her very upset.
That really devastated her. She felt betrayed, and at that point I said, okay, look, he didn't want you to know he was back. And I remember saying to her, now it's the time you move on, but She just could not quite get over Marcus.
Investigators learn that Tara calls Marcus from her car and confronts him about not getting in touch.
She was coming back from class in Waycross when she had engaged in a telephone conversation with Marcus Harper.
Marcus tells Tara that their relationship is over once and for all. According to friends and family, she has an emotional breakdown on the road.
She called hysterically and just felt like she was not able to drive. And one person went and picked her up, and the other passenger drove her car home. So they took her back to her house, and from what I understand, they had to carry her in, and she was just so, hysterical, crying.
Tara's fragile emotional state worries those closest to her.
I said, Tara, in these exact words, do you need anything? Do we need to do anything for you? Are you okay? You are not thinking about suicide. No, I promise you, I'm not, and that is not it. She said, I'm a little depressed, which everybody gets, but I am not suicidal.
Tara's family believes that she would never have committed suicide, regardless of how depressed she may have been over Marcus.
She was just not that type of person. She would not have done that to our mother. There's absolutely no way, regardless of how, distraught or upset she was.
Agents at the Georgia Bureau of Investigation come to the same conclusion.
The possibility of suicide was something that was certainly considered, but after a few days and she hadn't been found, it made it much less likely, because when one commits suicide, it's quite difficult to dispose of your own body. So we believe that had that occurred, we would have found her already.
In the meantime, investigators continue to gather information from Marcus Harper. In a series of interviews, he accounts for his time on the night Tara disappeared.
He said that on Saturday night, he had gone to the White Horse Saloon in Fitzgerald, where he visited with some friends until approximately 2 in the morning.
After that, Marcus says he met up with his friend and former partner on the Ocilla Police Department and spent the night in a police cruiser, doing a ride-along.
We were able to corroborate that as best it could be corroborated. There was, no point that he didn't cooperate with us in the investigation.
For the moment, investigators' focus shifts away from Marcus Harper. Then, the business card found on Tara's front door provides a new lead. Agents learn that it belongs to a police officer from a nearby town, a married man.
We learned that he and Tara were very close. He had been trying to contact Tara all day Sunday and had left a number of messages on her answering machine.
A neighbor tells police that he was a frequent visitor to Tara's house.
He went down there and left his card in the door so that when she got home that she would know that he had been by there.
Investigators interview the officer, and he provides an alibi for his time the night Tara disappeared.
He was interviewed and gave a very thorough timeline of his actions over the last couple of weeks.
They put his family through questioning and the people he was with that night. The thing is if he had anything to do with it, he wouldn't have gone down there and left a business card and door,
4 days after Tara's disappearance, investigators find themselves back at square one. Desperate to uncover tangible evidence, they organize a large-scale search for Tara.
A organized, comprehensive ground search took place of the entire perimeter of Irwin County.
We had horses, we had airplanes, people volunteered, we had four-wheelers, four-wheel drive vehicles, we had people walking.
The massive search effort uses every tool available in Irwin County's arsenal. Dozens of agencies and hundreds of volunteer searchers take part in the effort to find Tara.
It's a very emotional thing, especially when you know the area they're going, when you know they're looking in open, deep wells, when you know they're going through swamps, when you know they're looking in abandoned grain bins.
It was pretty intense. It was long hours, long hours. Usually the searches would go on from, say, 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning until dark.
Most of them did not know Tara. They had never met Tara. And you've got hundreds of strangers coming to search for this beautiful person that has vanished.
Despite the massive effort, none of the searches come up with any evidence related to Tara's disappearance.
It makes you feel helpless because, you know, you want to solve these problems and, you know, you want to catch the bad guy. There's one involved.
The one thing good that came out that we didn't find her, you know, was what it gave us hope, of course, that she was still alive.
With the search effort yielding no leads, the latex glove found in Tara's yard looms as a piece of potentially critical evidence. Since it was recovered, forensic tests have been ongoing, but agents are circumspect.
We weren't real hopeful that we would be able to retrieve meaningful DNA or fingerprint evidence from it, but we had to try. So once we obtained the glove, we took it to the GBI crime lab in Atlanta.
Forensic scientists put the glove through a battery of tests, including one looking for the presence of DNA. It's a long shot, because according to police, it's very difficult to recover useful evidence from latex gloves.
If you process for fingerprints first, it will destroy DNA evidence. If you process for DNA evidence, you may destroy or somehow cause problems with the fingerprint evidence. They basically cut it up based on the probability of which section of the glove would reveal which type of evidence and processed it accordingly.
We all watch TV, and on CSI, you know, they do the DNA, and, you know, we know everything within 30 minutes, but, I mean, it's weeks and weeks and weeks to get results back. And, you know, it's very frustrating to just, you know, sit and wait.
Despite the long odds, investigators hit the jackpot.
We were able to recover both fingerprint evidence and DNA evidence.
The fingerprints found on the glove are only partial prints, limiting their use in the investigation.
Fortunately, we also had DNA on the glove, male DNA.
Thanks to the DNA evidence, GBI agents finally have a powerful lead in Tara's disappearance.
The DNA evidence lets us know that a male was at Tara's house and either wearing or had a glove in their possession.
Coming up, police look for a DNA match, believing that person may be responsible for Tara's disappearance.
We began swabbing pretty much any associate of Tara's that we came across.
And later,
volunteers are back searching for Tara Grinstead.
The news media descends on Ocilla, potentially compromising the investigation.
When you lose control of the flow of information, you don't know what you lost.
Has been in full force for 10 days. Investigators recovered DNA evidence from the latex glove found at Tara's residence, suggesting that an unknown male was on Tara's property during the time she disappeared.
We knew that we were looking for a male potential offender. So at that point, we ensured that we obtained DNA samples from most everyone we could associate with Tara.
She met hundreds of people every day, and she was such a personable person and smiled, and she would introduce herself to anybody.
Any male that came in contact with Tara, whether it was at her high school, at one of the colleges she went to, there's very few people that I know that they haven't swabbed.
Agents collect the DNA of 144 men that had any contact with Tara, no matter how distant.
Essentially, all you do is take a swab of the inside of someone's cheek and submit that swab for comparison against the questioned DNA. In our case, the DNA from the glove.
But when the samples of DNA are compared, there is no match with any of Tara's male associates. Investigators find no match with the National DNA Database either.
We've investigated everyone that we know of that was closely associated with Tara, and we can't find anything to indicate that any of them are responsible for her disappearance.
But investigators can't eliminate any of the men in Tara's life either. They might have had an accomplice whose DNA was left on the glove.
Maybe someone was involved in moving Tara's body. Maybe someone was involved in cleaning up, whatever evidence may have been at her residence before we arrived.
The lack of conclusive evidence frustrates investigators. Although each of Tara's close male associates provide credible alibis, none can account for every minute of their time during the 34 hours between when Tara was last seen and when she was discovered missing.
It's difficult for anyone to account for every hour of every day and provide an alibi for that. There are times that they're alone. and nobody knows exactly what they're doing.
Because so much is unknown, investigators still need to consider all possibilities surrounding Tara's disappearance.
She left on her own, that she was trying to make some point to resolve one of her relationships, that any of these people that we encountered in the first day or days thereafter could have gotten into an altercation with her, or that there could be just a random offender out there that saw Tara as a crime of opportunity. Nothing was beyond the possibility, and nothing is. So as much as we'd love to clear people, say that they had no involvement, we're unable to do so because we don't know what happened to Tara.
As time drags on and Tara isn't found, investigators face an unexpected new challenge.
Turning our attention now to the case of that missing Georgia high school teacher, Tara Grinstead.
Volunteers are back searching for Tara Grinstead.
Growing attention from the national news media makes a sensitive investigation difficult to manage.
The entire interior of the residence and exterior was being broadcast as newscaster after newscaster toured the residence, videoed it, and put it on the air.
Your possible crime scene is all of a sudden exposed to the national media. That's just something that law enforcement isn't used to having happen.
According to both Ocilla Police and the GBI, confidential details of their investigation are reported by the news media without their knowledge or consent.
Things that were in the residence that we might have used to trip up somebody in an interview was gone.
Investigators never wanted their discovery of the latex glove to become public knowledge, but it did.
Once it became public, anyone that we interviewed that may have been responsible for Tara's disappearance and was the one that left that glove knew we had it. You might think that he had dropped it somewhere else, or may not even realize he'd left a glove behind at all.
Equally troubling, private citizens set up tip lines, but sometimes neglect to share information with law enforcement.
One well-known tip line was actually going to the cell phone of a bounty hunter. What information may have been lost because of that, I can't imagine. When you lose control of the flow of information, you don't know what you lost.
The sometimes intrusive media coverage also stokes the fires of accusation.
With all the media attention, there were a lot of armchair sleuths all over the country that were contacting us and some conducting their own investigation.
One website, called Backward State, goes so far as to present excerpts from one of GBI agent Gary Rothwell's television interviews, played backwards. The amateur sleuth claims that the interview audio, played in reverse, reveals hidden clues about the people responsible for Tara's disappearance.
I was identifying the true offender, and all you had to do was play my interview backwards. It was amazing.
Then, perhaps due to the media blitz, several new tips promising information into Tara's disappearance come in.
I got a phone call and was told that there had been a fire not too far out of town, and they said, I don't want to upset you, but I just need to prepare you. There is a chance that it could be connected to Tara.
There was a residence a few miles from Ocilla where a house burned and a vehicle burned. There were some theories developed that that arson was used to cover up evidence of Tara's abduction.
GBI agents and support personnel go to the burned-out house to investigate.
We headed to that scene as fast as possible, coordinating, having appropriate personnel to process it.
Anytime there's burned bodies or the remains of something are found, that's the first thing that goes through my mind, is it her?
But the search effort yields nothing.
Nothing at the arson scene was found that could be associated with Tara.
In the beginning, every time what sounded like a viable tip would come in, we would immediately think, this is it. After the first probably 2 or 3 times then that happened, you learn to be guarded in your optimism.
Over the next few months, more tips come in, but none bring investigators any closer to finding Tara.
There's been many times when we had what we call he ain't right moments, where we've encountered people in this investigation that their behaviors didn't seem appropriate. That's happened lots of times. Unfortunately, we haven't found evidence to support those feelings. Most of the time, we found evidence completely to the contrary.
Three years go by without any meaningful leads. Then, there is a bizarre development in the case.
I've decided to confess a few things. I've decided to do it on YouTube because there's millions of people that can help play my game.
With his face and voice digitally distorted, a man calling himself the Catch Me Killer posts an anonymous video online.
I want to confess to 16 murders. But in order to do so, I'm going to give everybody a clue. Many clues.
He claimed that he was a serial killer. He claimed that he had murdered 16 people, and he alluded to the fact that Tara was one of them.
The video doesn't refer to Tara by name, but cites details that clearly identify her, including the date of her disappearance.
He claimed that he had slit her throat, and he made reference to her screams into the night and said something about, but my blade, she could not fight. It was just horrible things that he said.
It was almost a sickening feeling to have an individual get up there and say those kind of things.
The GBI quickly launches an investigation to identify and apprehend the man claiming to have murdered Tara Grinstead.
Here we have a guy who's basically claiming that he's killed a woman we've been looking for 4 years. We had to find him.
Coming up, investigators zero in on the Catch Me Killer.
We executed search warrants on the basis that Tara was a victim of a crime and that he was the perpetrator. We were looking for evidence.
For almost 3.5 years, there are still no suspects in her disappearance. But now, a man calling himself the Catch Me Killer posts an anonymous video online. With his voice and likeness digitally obscured, he claims to have killed 16 people, including Tara Grinstead.
Once all 16 bodies are found, you'll know exactly who I am, because I have knowledge that the police know about, the FBI know about, but you don't.
Investigators note that the Catch Me Killer appears to possess intimate knowledge of Tara's life.
He described Tara's occupation, Tara's participation in beauty pageants, locations on Highway 32, which ran right through Ocilla, Georgia. There was no question he was talking about Tara.
I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat, just hanging on every minute for information. I thought, you know, this is what we've been waiting for, and this is going to be the answer. We're going to finally know what happened to her.
Officials from several agencies join forces to track down the self-confessed killer. Agents get search warrants in order to locate the computer used to post the video.
What we did is ultimately traced the posting of that YouTube video to a couple of locations in Gainesville, Georgia, in Hall County, Georgia.
Investigators identify the man behind the video as Andrew Scott Haley. They raid his home and other locations in Georgia and seize his computer, camera, and writings. Within hours, they determine that Haley's video confession is a hoax.
He thought it was just a game, and he thought he could dupe people, and he somehow took pleasure in doing that. I don't think he gave any consideration to the harm that he was causing the victims' families and others that cared about Tara.
I still cannot understand what this person must have said to himself every day to justify what he was doing and to tell himself that it was okay. This was not a teenage prank. This was a grown, married man with children of his own.
Haley is found guilty of felony tampering with evidence and making false statements, and sentenced to 10 years in prison. As a first offender, he'll serve just 2 years in a work-release jail. Today, the Grinstead case file is the Georgia Bureau of Investigation's biggest active case. Finding Tara still hinges on making a DNA match to the latex glove found outside her home.
It's almost amazing that we haven't gotten a hit yet. If someone is responsible for Tara's disappearance, it's highly likely we haven't talked to them yet.
Investigators still believe the case will eventually be solved.
We have evidence. We have DNA evidence. We have fingerprint evidence. It's not like we have nothing. We have a lot of information. We just don't know what it all means.
In the meantime, Tara's family and friends continue to wait.
Is she gone? Is she dead? When you just don't know any answers, you don't have a way of controlling your emotions.
It's a horrible situation for anybody to have to go through. It's worse than death. Death is final. Someone vanishing, it's not final until you find them.
You see how hurt these people are at the loss or disappearance of their loved one, and you want to put an end to that.
I've never experienced anything like that. I do have girls of my own. I just can't imagine what it would feel like if one of those were in a situation like Tara.
With Tara missing now for more than 5 years, her family is desperate for closure on their tragedy.
I just feel like